for this computer. All right, ladies and one gentleman, we are doing a Thursday class. And so let me share my screen with you. Today's topic is what to do when somebody wants to move out early. What to do. And we have never been super clear, step by step, most desirable, least desirable options. And it's like kind of like a free-for-all negotiation. So we're going to kind of put a little bit of meat on the bones today and be more clear. Okay. Let me share this with you. It's a work in progress. But here we go. I don't know if you can see it. So if a tenant moves out early, I separated it. Forgive me for my military days. Best course of action number one, alternative option, least desirable option. In the military, as a military intelligence officer, I would have to determine the enemy's most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action, and most probable, or that's kind of the same thing, or something like that. Anyways, it's kind of like the same thing. So we're just kind of like coming up with 3 options, and I'm going to go over the best course of action first. Okay. The best course of action is that the tenant agrees to what we have in our handbook as an example for fees, which is 1 month termination fee. I was thinking about calling it an early move out fee because I don't want them to think that their term, you'll see later on. But anyways, 1 month termination fee and a 2 month lease buyout fee in exchange for a earlier lease end date. Who knows the difference between those 2 fees? Why do we call those 2 separate fees? This was a recent change, so I guess I haven't been reading the handbook recently. You may not know, but the difference is
one is the cost of relet fee.
There you go. Yes.
To cover the owner's expense for having to release the home. The lease termination fee is basically a penalty for terminating their lease early.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get into that here in a little bit. So the termination fee goes to us, one way to think about it, and the buyout fee goes to the owner. So we'll explain more of that in a little bit. All right, so in this course of action, the property manager sends an amendment. Okay, amendment has to be sent. On that amendment, it's going to say, hey, tenant, you owe us 1 month termination fee of this amount and a 2 month lease buyout fee of this amount. And here's when you will pay it by. Okay, tenant, time in which tenant will pay these fees in order for having a new lease termination date of whenever. And then once these fees are paid, that now we have a fulfilled agreement. And then you can, and once the amendment is signed, then it's all official. The conforming is sent. So the conforming email should be sent after the amendment is signed and the fees are paid. Because what it's saying is, here is you're leaving and it's conforming with your lease. And we don't want to give that permission or a mixed message if he hasn't paid. We want him to know that you have to pay and sign, and then it's conforming. This notice conforms to the current terms of the amended lease, which includes the new lease end date. All right, so let's talk about these fees. The termination fee goes to Mars Hill. We need this money. It covers our cost to relist the property. So we have a guarantee. One of our guarantees is that if someone terminates early, someone that we put in the property, we'll waive our leasing fee under the tenant replacement guarantee. So we're not going to charge them to release. And the way we are going to compensate for us going through all of this process is through this 1 month termination fee. Any questions there? I'll stop right there. Now, in the past, when this wasn't so clear, the owner was, probably prepared to pay us a listing fee, releasing fee, right? And we didn't collect this. It still works the same way, but what you don't want, it just gets confusing. You don't want them to be like, well, this guarantee says I don't have to pay, and now we're like coming out of pocket. So this is the best course of action. We collect that 1 month termination fee and we honor our guarantee. We're not making any exceptions or doing it different or whatever. The lease buyout fee goes to the owner. So he gets 2 months of rent. You might be like, wow, what a great deal, right? Well, he does have to, he doesn't have to pay to release because he has our guarantee, but he is taking a risk, right? I mean, what if it sits empty for several months? So this is to assume the risk of an early termination date. With an early termination date, the owner assumes the risk of not having guaranteed rent. Not only are you not having this guaranteed rent, but you don't have somebody living in there and taking care of it, right? So there's some risk there. So here's an example. Fred wants to move out October 1, and the lease ends January 1. That's 3 months early. So the PM says, hey, Fred, I got to get this approved by the owner, but typically when this happens, we require if the owner approves, the tenant to pay a 1-month termination fee and a 2-month lease buyout fee. This is set forth in our handbook as what we typically require if the owner approves. And we can change the lease end date to the date you move out. Okay, so Fred says, you know what, I'm okay with this. And this is not the greatest example because you might be thinking, well, he's moving 3 months early and he's paying 3 months. Why would he be okay with it? Well, maybe he doesn't want to be responsible for the home and the utilities for those 3 months, right? Maybe he's like, you know what? If that's the right thing to do, I'll do it, on principle. But anyways, that's where you want to start the negotiations. Find out, hey, okay, that's great, Fred. How soon can you make this payment? Just give me 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks, great. Let me check with the owner and get approval, and we'll make this official. And owner approves. You say, hey, owner, this is a good deal. Hopefully we get someone in November 1st, and you actually might make some money. If not, he's going to leave anyways, most likely. So take what you can get. After approval, PM draws up an amendment changing lease end date and outlining the fees that Fred will pay within the next whatever agreed upon time period. All right, that's the best course of action. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, suggestions on that situation?
So this is what we're going to do no matter what, right? So even if they're landlord level and they don't have the guarantee of we'll lease it for free, we're still going to do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, I've been in the situation many times, where the owner says, no, I don't, they're sick or whatever. I don't want to make money on their misfortune. I'm fine with just the leasing fee being covered. So,
okay. That's a great question.
In that case, we're still going to collect our 1 month.
That's a great question. The owner has control over the fees that he can collect from the tenant, but the owner doesn't have a control on like how we run our business, administration fees, late fees, return check fees, trip charges, and 1-month termination fees. Those are fees that we charge as a company. So the owner doesn't have control over those fees, but he can say, you know what, if they don't want to, if no buyout fee, then we don't have to do a buyout fee.
Got it. As long as our 1 month is covered.
Alternative option. Or maybe you may think that in military speak, this might be the most likely course of action because this happens a lot. Tenant says, I can't do that. I can only do a 1-month termination fee. I can't buy out the lease. Well, can you do 1 month buyout? No, I can't even do that. Wow. Okay. We got lucky he could do the 1-month termination fee. So the alternative option is he can't do that. So maybe as a compromise, we say, well, then you'll be responsible through the lease end date, right? That's happened before, right? Recently with you, Ashley, right? That one person was responsible through the lease end date. But if we get someone to move in earlier, we will, prorate your liability and do a new lease end date at that point, right? So PM sends an amendment and says, okay, here's the fees that you owe, the 1-month termination fee, and here's when you will pay it. You also have to put a time frame. Once these fees are paid and the amendment is signed, again, just like earlier, a non-conforming email is sent. So I don't think we've done this in the past, because now my new understanding is that because they're not occupying the house through the lease end date, it is not conforming to the language of the lease. The lease says, I mistakenly thought, hey, as long as you're paying rent, you're fulfilling your lease. But the lease does require them to not vacate, to stay in that property. Oops. Hey, Autumn, can you get this call with Joshua? All right. So, in that case, it's non-conforming, okay? And the email will basically say, hey, you're leaving early. So the termination fee again goes to Mars Hill to cover our costs of relisting the property. They leave October 1. In this example, Fred moves out October 1. Lease ends January 1. So he can't pay anything except the termination fee. Again, we have to make sure we run these things by the owner. They're aware of what's happening. They understand that this termination fee is, they're paying a termination fee to us, but they can't pay any holding fees. I mean, not holding fees, buyout fees. PM tells Fred he will check in with the owner to get approval, and then you drop an amendment. And if the home is leased earlier, and another amendment will be required for a new lease end date, so that we can have that formalized where, okay, now you're terminating your lease at this date whenever the new lease starts, and then we'll prorate back if necessary. Okay. Any questions on that one? The least desirable course of action is there's no cooperation at all. In this case, yeah, I can't pay anything. I'm out of here. Keep in mind, all three of these are the tenant, whether good reason or bad reason. I understand there's good reasons. It's the tenant basically breaking the lease. And the first option, we've negotiated it so that they don't have to break the lease. We've come to term that, okay, we'll grant you this new early date. And the second option is kind of a compromise, right? They're working with us and we're working with them. The third option, they're like, I'm breaking this lease, good reason or not. And sorry, right? Just try to rent it out as soon as you can. In this case, we do need to send a breach of lease. It's in zip forms. And we send a non-conforming email. And of course, update the owner and note property where. Okay. Has that happened to you guys in the past, lately? This third option?
I had an interesting one lately, where the guy's lease expired on September 30th. And we bugged about getting his renewal signed. He never said he was going to renew, but he never said he was not going to renew. And then, we ultimately, typed up the new lease, sent it over to him, and bugged. And then a week before the end of the month, we found out that he moved out. So, the TAA lease is very clear, about if they move out without giving the proper notice, you can charge rent through that 60-day notice, even though the 60-day notice exceeds the lease end date. I mean, they're still responsible for giving that notice. The Texas lease doesn't really say that in those words, but I did, charge him the 60-day notice, rent through the 60 days, and told him, if we end up getting it leased out sooner, we'll credit it back to you, which we did. But yeah, just kind of one of those weird situations. I think that's the first time that's ever
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. 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 Good open communication. That's the foundation for all that. Okay. That's really it. Any other questions on that? Do we know what color we're gonna wear next time? White. That'll be easy for me.
No, that's just you.
I never wear white.
Actually, we're wearing white for volleyball because that's
Ah.
the uniform color tonight. So I'm ready. I'm like, yes.
Get
So
a
you'll
white
have to let us
bottle.
know.
What, Val?
Yeah, you'll,
On Friday, I need to know if they're champions or not.
It's tough. That team beat us before, but they had a low ceiling. And so when they were used to playing in a low ceiling and we weren't, so we hit it too high and hit the ceiling and it messed us up. So now we're playing in a high ceiling area. So
is it one match or is it like best out of 3?
best out of 3.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll have to let us know about that. And then y'all know my Houston Astros are starting in the World Series tomorrow.
Oh,
so you
wow.
better be cheering.
Go Houston and go Evergreen.
I don't watch baseball, but yay. Rooting
All right.
for Valerie.
We're going to keep this call short, okay? Any qualms?
Nope.
Anything,
I
just
think so.
call me afterwards. Actually, I added those 2 additional links and the one that you found, Wes, which was a very good one, to the service team systems manual. So it's in there as a resource for the appliance thing. And
appliance age.
Yeah, appliance age. And just as a side note, Mark, I talked to Marquis Ashley and let her know that appliance check, because come to find out it's wasn't worth it to fix because of the age, and a new one's going to be needed. But I reminded her that appliance check, one of the cool things about this company is that they do, at least he told me at the time, replace appliances. So we're going to put him to the task and see if he'll do it for this one.
Yeah, that's what Marquis sent an email
So-
that he's going to get us some prices for how much it would be to replace it with him. So she already
Yeah.
kind of drafted an email for that. So I was like,
Cool.
I guess we'll be kind of see if he comes in cheaper than Home Depot. I'll be shocked. But we'll see. I'm not gonna
And if
say
it
no.
costs a little bit more, and he's installing it, and because I mean we still have to tally up the Home Depot tax and whatever, if there's an install or
Mhm.
haul away. Sometimes it's free, but we could get a total price to kind of compare apples to apples to see exactly what he's charging.
Yeah.
But I was hoping he could offset that cost, because if he has access to like scratch and dent, fairly new stuff that's just physically not has a dent in it or scratch, whatever, then maybe that might offset it. So, all right. I'll talk to you guys later.
All righty. Have
Thank
fun.
you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.